Hey fam, welcome to another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate with Jose. Got a good guest for you today, a new friend of mine, AJ Smith. Woo-hoo-hoo! What's going on, AJ?
Hey, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. Me and AJ met through Facebook and got to know each other a little bit yesterday, and now I'm having him on the podcast and introduce him to the rest of you. So you'll get to know him just as much as well as I do by the time this is through. So the floor is yours, AJ. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and tell us your journey in real estate.
Yeah, I'll give a brief overview. First, I want to say that was an awesome intro. I loved the graphics and the
My
music.
boy Mando did that for me. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that was so cool. But yeah, so just starting on where I started in real estate, I started my education in 2018. I did the whole journey, read all the books, listened to all the podcasts. I analyzed about 700 deals before buying my first one. And before I bought my first one, I submitted 5 offers, and 4 of those got rejected. The 5th one finally got through. And so that first deal was a fourplex. I lived in it. I had 3 other people that were paying the rent, and we just went unit by unit, improving them. And we were able to increase the rents from about $550 a month to now about $895 about 4 years later. So that was through, new kitchens, new baths, a lot of DIY stuff, subway tiles, floors, paint, all those kinds of things. From there, we went from fourplexes to, flipping houses. And now we're doing various projects like a mobile home park in Oklahoma. We're developing land down in Texas. And then we're doing 6plexes and 8plexes in Eastern Texas and Louisiana as well.
Are those ground up projects or those already existing?
Those are existing projects, and we're rehabbing those. So we're just doing some renovations on them. The only development that we're doing so far is the mobile home park development in Texas.
Gotcha. So you said 2018. What changed for you in 2018 that made you decide that real estate was the route you wanted to take compared to, say, be a day trader or go back to school and become some kind of doctor or something that's a high paying job?
Yeah, absolutely. I started to actually, my brother put me on to one of the Bigger Pockets podcasts, and they were talking a lot about how, you can basically identify a property that's under market value. And you can improve it and add a ton of equity to that property and basically, grow your net worth very quickly. So a lot of people look at flipping houses as a way to do that. And we do that right now. But once I learned from one of these books and some mentors that you can do the same thing for apartments, you can do it for mobile home parks, you can do it for much larger properties and have a
Sure.
much bigger chunk that's coming your way, then I was
Right.
hooked on those.
Nice. So, most people come into this and like, oh, I can't do it. I'm broke. I got no money. I don't have a rich mom and dad. I don't have, a rich uncle. So, can you share with everybody how you were able to go from I had no idea what I was going to do with real estate, analyzing 700 deals, and then all of a sudden now you're going from fourplexes to multifamily properties. How does one start with nothing and start growing to be able to handle those type of projects?
Yeah, it's a gradual, I call it like a layering of knowledge. So you start at the base level, you learn some of the simple things, and then you find people that can improve your knowledge base as you continue to go forward. So I attribute a lot of what I've done so far to great partners. One of my partners, Phil, is going to be on the podcast or has been on the podcast. And a lot of mentors that I've either, joined their groups or I've partnered with them on deals or I've just taken them out to coffee. I think knowledge and who is in your network is going to be the thing that propels people from the I don't know what to do or I don't know if I can do it to actually taking that step forward.
Gotcha. So, what would you say was the best advice that you had received um, as you were growing to go from, uh, let's say, a quadplex to a multifamily? What got you like, okay, this is the nugget that got me over the humper, that's helped me out the most in my my journey?
So there's two things I would say. I think as a beginner, the thing that allowed me to really start was house hacking. And if your audience isn't familiar with house hacking, if anyone out there isn't familiar with house hacking, basically it's the concept of co-living, but you own the house. And that's your main primary residence. So you buy a property, you live in it, and then you have some roommates or you have, other units where people are helping to pay the mortgage, and that allows you to get into the house. Now, why that helped me start, there's a few things. One, your financing is really strong. So instead of buying a property as an investment property, and you might have a higher payment, a higher interest rate, you can get a lower down payment, a lower monthly payment, a lower interest rate, all because you live there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're basically at the property most of the time, and you can manage it much more easily than if you're out of state. So, I needed a place to live. Buying a place and living there and having some other, folks there to assist with the mortgage and kind of making it an investment that way, that just made a ton of sense. And
Sure.
it's something that I could easily wrap my brain around. So that's where I started. And then what helped me grow from there is the knowledge of, I bought my first one. To be honest with you, I think I bought it probably at market price or maybe even a little above, you know? So I didn't get a super great deal, but I got great financing, which has helped. Um, then what helped me grow was realizing a great deal is really a deal where you can buy right. You want to buy low enough that you can get a ton of equity. You can have a ton of space between what the property is actually worth and what you're
Mhm.
buying it for. And so that's helped us grow and start buying much larger properties and bringing other partners on because there's a lot more room on these deals and a lot more profit too.
Nice. So, kind of just to elaborate for the audience, one of the tools that some investors would use would be an FHA loan in this, where you only have to come to the table with like 3.5% down. That's how a lot of investors get into these type of deals that are multifamily, fourplexes. And the nice thing about it is, like you said, you live into it for a year. You can refinance that to a conventional loan as a refinance, and then you can take that same um, I won't say the same FHA, but now you're eligible for another FHA loan in that same area because FHA has a limitation that you can only have um, a loan within or own properties using a VHA loan. Um, you can't have two properties within 100 miles of each other. So um, that's one way he may have gotten into it. Do you want to share how you actually did finance that first one?
Yeah, and I'll share how I financed the second one and the third one, and I'll
Sure.
just kind of
Let's do it.
briefly go over each of them. So my case was a little unique in that I bought that first one in 2021. It was an owner-occupied property, and if you all remember, in 2021, interest rates were like very, very low. And
Yeah.
so I was able to get a 30-year amortization at 2.75% fixed,
Wow.
so very low interest rate
Sure.
because I lived there. And
All right.
so what was even better about that product and something I would recommend folks look into is if you can find a community credit union, if you can find a local bank, oftentimes they have either grants or other subsidies that help lower your down payment even lower. So they may have a conventional program that's 5% down or 3% down. I was able to get in for 0% down because this particular bank had a product that allowed me to do that. So I would check that out for your audience as like a good way to reduce
Entry.
your
Yep.
cost.
Nice. All right. Let's keep going. Let's go. Property number two. What'd you do? You brought it
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, happy to. Yeah. So the second property, I also did a conventional loan. I did 3% down through the same bank. And so that allowed me to buy that second property. But this time, that was similar to like a FHA 203K loan, which for those of you out there who aren't familiar, that also allows you to finance the rehab of that property.
Yep.
And so that was rolled into my loan. Basically, the deal with this deal, it was a single family house with a mother-in-law suite attached. And I identified that I could turn one of the rooms into an additional bedroom, and I could do some simple changes to add a lot of value to this house. And so that's essentially what I did. It was a live-in flip over the course of probably about 9 months. Sold that house and then moved into the one that I'm in now. And again, I think that was about a 3%, sorry, that was a 5% down conventional payment. But I was able to take the profits from that deal, move it in, and have that, be pretty low out of pocket.
Did you refinance every time, or did you keep the existing loan in this? Because you said it was your primary residence. So did the bank ask you, are you moving into this one? Are you refinancing out of the other one? Like, were there any stipulations that you had to take care
Yes.
of?
So what's fascinating about this too is like, and if you have listeners that live or work in a profession that moves them around a lot, when I was first starting in real estate, I worked for a grocery store as a district manager. And so I was sent to different districts across states. And so this was over 100 miles away that I moved into a different property. And so
Gosh,
that falls outside of some of the restrictions with these loan programs. Is if you're
right.
moving for work and it's a certain radius away, you can have another one even outside of that 1 year period. So that worked going out there. I sold that, then I came back, and that was a similar instance as well.
Gotcha. Awesome. So we got all that. So why don't you share a little bit about your experience? So tell us a good experience you had in your journey, and then a bad experience you had in real estate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I bought a fourplex that was in 2023. I got it off market. I found it on Craigslist of
Oh,
all
nice.
places,
Yeah.
and I reached out to the guy, and I saw it the next day. I saw it on Saturday on Craigslist. I walked it in person on Sunday, and we came to a deal at a McDonald's. I gave him some money as an earnest money deposit. And then, I ended up buying it probably 30 days later. Um, we had a lot of renovations at that property. I used a private money lender. And for that deal, I had $0 out of pocket. I was able to take that to the bank, refinance it, and have that private money lender paid off entirely. And then I held on to that deal for about a year in terms of, a hold, and then ended up selling it after that short-term capital gains, long-term capital gains, it was kind of reclassified into that after the year-long period. So that was a great deal where we were able to get in very low. I think I bought it for 100,000, 110,000 total for 4 units. We put in about 40 or 50,000, and then about a year later, we sold it for 195, I believe. So that was one great deal. And then a tougher experience that I had, I bought another fourplex that was for about 135. And one thing I didn't realize when I was first starting this journey is like for insurance, for everyone out there, I'd really recommend reading your insurance documents very closely and see what exclusions apply, especially if you live in a snowy state. And so I'll tell this story. Basically, I bought this property and the roof was old. And we live in a state where we might get 3 feet of snow. And when you have a flat roof that's older, that can pose an issue. And so we had an instance where we had a ton of snow. The roof, failed in one of the rooms. We had to vacate that room, move them to a different unit, and then repair everything. But the biggest lesson I learned out of that was insurance would not cover it because we had an exclusion due to our electrical panel moving us from basically one level of insurance to another level. So if we had just spent $1,000 to replace the electrical panel, we could have had insurance cover the $20,000 roof. But because we didn't do that, we had to front that out of pocket and find another way to recoup that capital. So that's one lesson that I would share with people is especially if you live in a Midwestern state that gets a ton of snow, check your insurance documents, but do that overall, just so what are some of the items that may be covered, what are some of the items that I want to watch out for or replace so I can get the best insurance coverage possible.
That's a great nugget. I mean, whether you own your house right now or you got renter's insurance, you should know what your coverage is, because the thing you don't want is when the stuff happens, right? And then you got to figure out, well, am I covered? Am I not covered? What is covered? You want to know that going ahead of time, and especially if you don't think it's the cover, what you want covered is not covered. You kind of have to weigh the options, right? Is it worth getting that the extra coverage, or are you willing to take the risk of loss? So that's a great nugget.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a hard lesson to learn. In that particular deal, I personally reallocated my capital to my partners so my partners would be made whole. And then, I took that loss personally. And you know what? I just look at it as a lesson of like, hey, you go in, you had some ignorance, you learned a lesson. Now you can take that forward into other deals.
I call it a very expensive webinar, is what I call it.
Exactly.
So trust me, I've had some expensive webinars in my past, so I can feel you on that one.
Absolutely.
We talked about your journey, and people go get into real estate in different ways. And I know, and you mentioned Phil already as your partner. So how easy was it for you to go from somebody who just learning real estate to um, start reaching out and doing joint ventures with other investors? Like, how was that transition? How did you vet your partners? Because I mean, a lot of people that watch this, they've never done this, and the fear of trusting somebody else is scary for some people. So, share how you decided to make that jump from being a individual investor to opening yourself up for joint ventures.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is you have to establish trust and you have to establish a relationship with that person first before you do anything from the business side. You should know about them personally. You should know about what's going on in their lives. You should learn about some of the past business deals that they've done, some of their partners. Speaking to them on those levels and the people around them allows you to build a bigger picture than maybe just what you see online or what you get out of one conversation with them. So, having a partner who is very transparent, who's very open about like, hey, here are some lessons that I learned, here are some mistakes that I made, and how I changed my approach. I think that helps a lot in terms of building trust, especially when that's mutual. And so when you have two people that, that's one thing I really appreciate about Phil is like we're of the same mind in a lot of ways. The way that we approach business, the way that we approach relationships, we're of the same mind in a lot of those ways. So I'd say finding people who are in communities that share a lot of similar values, finding people who, for me, who are a little bit further ahead in the game, who have been in real estate for a little bit longer, who have more experiences, more partnerships, and then finding a way to add value to that person in a different way. So, my partner is really great at sourcing deals, at building relationships, at finding, capital partners. And I assist with the capital partner part. But what I'm really good at and what I enjoy is the systems part. So I enjoy creating systems that are efficient. I enjoy, making sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's and everything follows a certain order. And that's very complementary to Phil's skill set. We kind of balance each other out in that way. So finding a partner who has a similar value system, but whose skills are complementary to yours and who you get to know in a different way, I think is very helpful in establishing partnerships that can be long lasting.
So is Phil your only partner, or do you have other partners as well?
Yeah, we have multiple partners. So Phil's one of my partners, and it just kind of depends on the deal. What we really like to do is we like to work with subject matter experts, whether it be in certain areas or in certain asset classes. So we have partners that are subject matter experts in mobile home parks. We have partners that are subject matter experts in a certain market. It just depends on what the deal calls for.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that Phil will be on the podcast, and had him yesterday. He mentioned that he's kind of expanding his repertoire or his portfolio by acquiring an HVAC property. He got equity into a construction company. Have you done any kind of branching out like that for yourself, buying businesses that kind of support or complement your real estate investing?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we're working on together is that acquisition. And I had a great conversation with an owner today, someone who was able to purchase and roll up HVAC companies and sell them to a private equity firm. And I think when you're doing things like that, it's wonderful to have a network of mentors
Sure.
who have done that before, can lead you in the various steps that you need to take, the questions you need to ask, the systems you have to have. And so that's why I really enjoy just meeting new investors and asking them, like, what do you do? What are some of the things that you're working on? Because there are a lot of people out there that can share lessons with you, and help you kind of grow, and you can do so vice versa.
I mean, it sounds like you're very established in investing, going from basically house hacking to multifamily. If people wanted to follow you, see your journey, and see how you progress, or if they wanted to see how they could partner with you, how would they reach out to you?
Yeah, go to connectaj.com. So connectaj.com, there's a free guidebook. You can download it for free, no obligation. And it'll teach you about mobile home park investing. It'll teach you about apartment investing. And then if you have any questions about house hacking, you can reach out to me as well on various social media platforms. I'm at AJ Smith Real Estate on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can reach out to me on any of those platforms.
Awesome. Well, fam, that's another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate. Let's give it up to AJ. Woo! And we'll see you on the next one. Have a good
Thanks, man.
one.